Hey there. Greetings, everybody. It's GleeCon here again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we read some cycle of hatred as we continue to see how the Burning Crusade stirs the pot between the Alliance and the Horde. And on our side journey, we just finished all of the Warcraft, the role-playing game D&D campaign setting, but there's more Dungeons and Dragons to come. All of those books were then essentially recrafted over the next 1 to 2 years. When World of Warcraft hit, something inspired them. Not only did they have this giant hit game on their hands, but they decided to revamp the entire campaign setting and make it a World of Warcraft Dungeons and Dragons game at the same time. So this is crazy. Like, I was playing World of Warcraft Classic when it came out, and little did I know, even though I also played Dungeons and Dragons, that there was a Dungeons and Dragons concurrently coming out at the same time, just busting out more and more content. So that's pretty crazy. This is now I've gone from 3.5 to revised 3rd edition, so the rules are a little bit different. And this time, as you can see, this book is way longer, almost twice as long, if not more than twice as long as the books we read before. We're going to not even play that game. We're going to break it down. That way we can stop and spend the time on whatever we want. So we're just going to kind of look at the intro to the book. This is the back of the book. It says the fog of war has been lifted because now we're in World of Warcraft. And there's some credits on the back. I'm not going to even really look. Special thanks to Mike Johnson and the normal people. Well, we don't need a table of contents because we're going to actually just look. So we're just going to read the introduction on this episode and take our time. Why not? There's no rush for this non-canon material. Here's a dwarf, the dwarves as we know them, as we get ready for World of Warcraft. So let's look at the little italics, which looks like flavor text. It says, Huron Firesinger, shaman of his Tauren tribe, stood atop a hill and looked east out upon the sweeping lands of Mulgore, as a southerly breeze played over his fur and whispered through the grass. A sense of rightness and stability touched the edge of his thoughts, felt through his feet planted firmly upon the ground. Yes, here the Tauren people could make a true home. Here they could stand against the centaur. Here they could explore their traditions freely. As the sun bled slowly over the horizon, Huron Firesinger smiled. It was a smile of grim determination which his people would need to keep forging their new homeland. But it was also the smile of hope. And with that, welcome to World of Warcraft, the role-playing game. So I'm not going to read all of this stuff, but it says this is your chance to make Azeroth come alive. Why a second revised edition? It says because it's coming out not so long after the first. Why? Says they didn't want to miss the opportunity of releasing this update in conjunction with the MMORPG. And this is going to come closer to the vision that they wanted. Okay, so basically I think things probably got ahead of them, where World of Warcraft was in production and evolving, and the books were probably just not catching up, and they just rolled forward with what it was, and maybe the head wasn't talking to the tail kind of things. So they talk about what's in the book. What else do you need? Well, nothing other than the other books we're going to read. You don't need the other. I mean, you really do, honestly, need the basic Dungeons and Dragons. So let's see. What are the new concepts? It says the great boon of the OGL. I don't even know what the OGL stands for. What the heck is OGL? Open Game License. It's a whole new game for we produced it under the Open Game License in order to get all the rules necessary for play between two covers and make sure they express more accurately. Okay. So I don't know exactly what that means unless what we're saying is that they're less beholden to strict Dungeons and Dragons rules. Same core rules, and yeah, so I guess, but that's not really that different from what happened the last time. So there's some terminology, racial levels, so you can level up your race, new classes, new spellcasting, injury, and death, because those are not the end game as in World of Warcraft. Hero points, which is, I wonder if that's similar to inspiration that you can get now in Dungeons and Dragons. Community rules. They're going to discuss base concepts, and that's Dungeons and Dragons base concepts. How to create characters. We don't need to, that's D&D 101. That's cool. We don't need any of that. Okay, so with the introduction, we can also look at the history and people. So this is worth a short read. Azeroth is not a gentle land. Conflicts have beset this world for generations, a world that still manages to survive through civil war, racial war, and battles over land, magic, and misunderstandings. Demons plagued the continents, pursuing their own destructive agendas. Though their army was defeated, they yet proved difficult to eliminate completely. The undead are another factor, terrifying the citizens and befouling graveyards. Conflict is commonplace, and lifespans are short for those who struggle to create a brighter future from a war-torn past. So it says that this is immediately picking up after Lands of Conflict. I don't know if the Shadow and whatever the last one we read, but okay. They're basically, yeah, timeline-wise, you can just keep it on going. In the western lands of Kalimdor, the Alliance and Horde were both ready to settle into their new homelands, respect their truce and lick their wounds, when unexpected attacks came in the Orcs' new country of Durotar. Alliance forces from shattered Lordaeron, led by Admiral Dalen Proudmoore, yeah, we read this, or I mean, we know about this, were determined to defeat the Orcs once and for all against the wishes of the Theramore Alliance officials. Janet Proudmoore, the Admiral's daughter and leader of the Alliance, respects the Orc who fought at her side in the Third War Chief Thrall and wished to keep the truce. Thrall chose to believe her, and when he attacked, he spared her and her supporters, killing her father and his forces. Yeah, this is all rehashing. In eastern lands of Lordaeron, Cosmodon and Azeroth, hope sputters and threatens to die as the undead rampage across the northern lands, and demons and orc warlocks converge in the south. It is no wonder both the Alliance and Horde fled west when hope was lost, but there are still a considerable number of stubborn fighters left on the continents, determined to keep their homes regardless of the threat. Okay, and I'm just going to skim the timeline. It says this is an overview. So 147,000 years ago, and we had this in a couple books ago too, the Titans arrived. Then the Titans placed the Well of Eternity. That inspired the Kaldorei to start having magic, and then they harnessed the well. And they create the subsect, the Highborn. They do become corrupted, and over the last 250 years, demons start manipulating them until the Burning Legion arrives. Malfurion and Illidan storm rage, though after a year of battle or so with Tyrande and the dragon aspects, they defeat them. And soon after, Illidan creates a new Well of Eternity and is banished. The dragons, though, plant the world tree over the well to kind of mellow things out. Now, the rest of the Kaldorei now call themselves Night Elves, abandoned magic. But after about 6,000 years of that, they kick out the ones that still want to stay with magic, the Highborn. They call themselves the High Elves, and they move across the seas, create the Sunwell in their own future. After all that, by another 1,200 years, then the humans finally form Arathor, a nation. Shortly after that, they ally with the wizards of them, ally with the Elven wizards, and create the Guardians of Tirisfal. And then the Ironforged dwarves are awakened, maybe by the gnomes, and they are sent out, and then they have the Curse of Flesh. Aegwynn, 1,500 years later, she is one of the last Guardians. She ends up going and fighting the demons in Northrend and fighting the avatar of Sargeras, creating all kinds of chaos within. 900 years later, Kil'jaeden starts messing around with Draenor. And then after 50 years of that, Ner'zhul realizes, oh, that sucks. This is not a good idea. So they kick him out and install Gul'dan. Shortly around that time, a year later, Egwene has a kid, but he's also himself impregnated with the spirit of Sargeras. Meanwhile, a few years later, the orcs begin abandoning shamanism and learning the warlock magic. Then they unite as the Horde. And 10 years later, while they're basically rampaging through Draenor, Egwene has a rage out, kills his dad, goes into a coma. 11 years later, there's nothing left to do on Draenor because they've defeated everything. And then 5 years before the Dark Portal opens, Medivh wakes up and he starts to go kind of crazy slowly. And he starts working with, I don't know if it's Kil'jaeden or whomever, but he's manipulated Gul'dan. And then the Dark Portal opens, the orcs start scouting, then the First War begins. A year after that, Black-Handed Destroyer really starts pushing out, and because he wants to get the Tomb of Sargeras. After they make landfall here, Durotan is killed, and Thrall is picked up by Adelis Blackmore. Anduin Lothar then kills Medivh, and ultimately Blackhand is just assassinated. It says by Orgrim Doomhammer, who then takes on the Horde himself, and they win the war after that. In between the two wars, Gul'dan creates Death Knights. Then the humans, dwarves, and high elves form an alliance in the north in Lordaeron, and Uther Lightbringer creates paladins, and the second war begins. The Horde picks up some new allies as well in the form of the trolls, the jungle trolls, not the trolls that are currently the allies. They go and they raise Quel'Thalas, and then Gul'dan betrays the Horde, raises Sargeras' tomb, and in an epic final battle where they're much weakened, the Lothar dies, but the Horde is defeated. The next year, the orcs that are remaining back in Draenor accidentally, under Ner'zhul's command, rip Draenor apart. And he tries to get out of there. Ner'zhul does, and he becomes the Lich King. Then Ner'zhul corrupts Kel'Thuzad. They start spreading the cult of the damned and the plague. Thrall eventually then escapes and tries to find the other orcs. And after some time, I guess it takes 7 years, but he does, and he reforms the Horde. They start going on some battles. Doomhammer dies, and Thrall then becomes war chief of the Horde. And the next year, the cult of the damned has now been spreading the plague, and we have all the events of the Third War. When that ends, towards the end of it, they move to Kalimdor. Illidan opens the portal to Outland. The Blood Elves follow him. The High Elves have now become the Blood Elves. Arthas and the Scourge race back because Illidan is in the Naga and the Blood Elves are trying to destroy the Lich King. He comes back. He defeats them. And then he becomes the new Lich King. Finally, Admiral Proudmoore says, no, we're going to take the Horde out, even though they're escaped over here. We've moved into Theramore. Jaina doesn't let that happen. Or she stands back and lets the Horde fight back. She kind of betrays them. All right, the current climate. And this is interesting because this is the first time we're reading about the current climate leading into Classic. The truce between the Horde and Theramore Isle is holding, but there were grudges on both sides. Both Alliance and Horde races expand across Kalimdor, settling in whatever habitable locations they can find. Lordaeron remains controlled by the undead, although a civil war rages between Arthas' Scourge and those undead who have broken his control, called the Forsaken. Demons roam freely across the world, terrorizing what few human forces remain. Although the world has suffered bloodshed and warfare for years, there is still no indication that the turmoil will end soon. Each of the mortal races begins to position itself for what could soon become the most crucial period of time in the world's history. The mood is that, hey, conflict is there and we kind of have to still live close together, but peace is not on their minds. There is a truce between the Alliance and the Horde, even though the history between the two involves raiding, sacking, slavery, internment camps, and a lot of blood. The previous uniting of forces to destroy the Burning Legion was enough to cause the leaders to establish the truce. Unfortunate timing caused blood to be spilled again between the Alliance and the Horde. Just when they proved to be able to fight alongside each other to prevent a greater harm befalling the world, the peace was shattered. For the first time in their history, the Alliance and Horde were coexisting without slavery, internment camps, or raids. Then, unknown to both sides, Alliance forces from Lordaeron, led by Admiral Dalen Proudmoore, attacked the Horde. The reasoning was vague and ever-changing. The orcs needed to die once and for all. The Horde did not deserve the vast kingdom of Durotar, while the Alliance was hemmed into a rocky island home, and some even thought Admiral Proudmoore's warriors were simply bitter about missing the final battles of the Third War and needed something on which to slake their aggression. So now the hackles are raised again. The Horde resents the attacks on their homeland. The Alliance, although regretting their allies' actions, aren't terribly pleased about the damage done to Theramore when the Horde counterattacked to destroy Admiral Proudmoore and his forces. Although Thrall and Jaina Proudmoore still maintain that a truce holds, this understanding does not always reach the lower ranks. The Horde does not travel to Theramore Island, and Alliance caravans and adventurers are warned away from Durotar and Mulgore. When Jaina and Thrall meet, they do so in a neutral territory on the Kalimdor mainland south of Durotar. When Horde and Alliance forces meet on the road, blood is often shed. Okay, so that's interesting in what the setting of Classic ultimately is technically there's a truce, but they don't like each other. Alliance and Alliance is the next part. Okay, there's essentially two alliances, basically. Those of the Theramore side and those left on Lordaeron. Right, Horde and Horde. There are the Horde in Durotar, and there are the Horde, like the Warlocks, that are... So basically we're saying there's divisions, philosophical divisions within. There's divisions between Night Elf and High Elf, Night Elf and Orc. Yeah, and they are fighting in Ashenvale, so there's that. Patriotism. So we're just kind of explaining that. And we'll read a lot more of this when we read the manual for World of Warcraft. Okay. The Alliance's new home in this campaign setting is Theramore, not Stormwind. So I wonder if that will change as we go. So this has got to be released right before, or right around the same time. But in this game setting, it's Stormwind. Back in Lordaeron, the citizens just wonder, where is the Alliance? Okay. The Horde is in Durotar. And this is kind of their new homeland. So the World of Warcraft, we have Azeroth. The settlements of Azeroth, there's Stormwind City. This is a big metropolis. Okay. It says it's primarily a human settlement. And so basically they're saying the Stormwind is there, but we still have Stormwind Assassins, not SI7. And now they're already running us down with the geography. There's the Blasted Lands, the Burning Steppes, map of Kalimdor, Lordaeron, Cosmodon, Azeroth, aka the Eastern Kingdoms. This is kind of the northern half of the Eastern Kingdoms. We have Deadwind Pass, we have Duskwood, we have Elwyn Forest, which has Stormwind City in it. We have the Red Ridge Mountains, we have Stranglethorn Vale, cut into two parts. The Swamp of Sorrows, we've already talked about Blasted Lands, and Westfall. So this is basically the human lands minus the jungle, and this is becoming demon lands. Cosmodon has Ironforge, which is within Dun Morog. It has the Badlands right there. We know that there is also Grimbatal, Loch Modan. Grimbatal is more... Where do they even have that listed? Yeah, what's that become? The Twilight Hinterlands or something like that? So I don't think there is Grimbatal originally. I think that's cut off, and eventually that becomes the Twilight Hinterlands or whatever it's called, Twilight Highlands or something. Lochmadon, Searing Gorge, the wetlands. This little introduction is a lot longer than I thought. Okay, Kalimdor and the settlements of Kalimdor, Orgrimmar, Ratchet. Yeah, so Stormwind is way bigger than Orgrimmar. I think it's at 200,000 compared to 16,000. Theramore, big city. So even this is not reflecting exactly what we're finding in the game, in my opinion. We have Ashenvale Forest, Ajara, the Barrens, Darkshore, Destless, Duratar, Dustwallow, Marsh, Fellwood, the Moonglade, Mount Hyjal. Yeah. Mulgore, the Stone-Tailed Mountain Stairs, Desert, Teldrassil. So notice there's a few that are not, look, these things, because they don't start out open in Classic. I guess Winter Spring has not started out. I didn't know that. But Mount Hyjal, that's for a long time. Even playing the game myself, I remember that being a big gaping hole. But Winter Spring gets added pretty quick. This is Silithus. That maybe gets added towards the end. This is Uldum. And that is blank for a long time until Cataclysm as well. What is this? I'm trying to remember what that is. Drawing a blank. Well, I guess that's Silithus and this is Ahn'Qiraj, kind of. Something like that. Or we have Ungoro Crater. Yeah, so this kind of gets broken up, I think, a little bit. That becomes Ahn'Qiraj. We have Silithus. We have Ungoro Crater. We have Uldum, Uldor, whatever. I always forget what makes those two up. Thousand Needles. In Lordaeron, the northern part of it, we still have Dalaran, Stratholme, the Undercity, Alterac Mountains, Arathi Highlands, Eastern Plainlands, Gilneas, the Hillsbrad Foothills, the Hinterlands. So just what we already have this established, and it's pretty cool. That Gilneas stays there again. It's shut off for a while. Silverpine, yeah, everything we just read. Coltiris. What's it say? It says, more recently, both Jane and Proudmoore and Grand Admiral Dalen Proudmoore sailed to the west, leaving Tandred, the last Proudmoore, to hold the nation together. Tandred does his best, but has few resources and fewer allies. That's not true. I do think Jaina has a brother. I think he's dead. I don't know. I can't remember. It's a BFA quest. Weird little story quest line, and I've only done it like once. But the mom is there, so that part's they totally changed it. Okay, Lordamere, Silverpine, Trustful, Western Plains, yeah, and then the Maelstrom in the middle. They talk about Northrend a little bit. Quel'Thalas, the Blackened Wood, Silver Moons, and Zulaman. Man, we're even going to get into the cosmology. I can't believe this is all the introduction. This is a lot to get into in an introduction. I really thought it was going to be a lot quicker. I'm sorry, guys. But they talk about what we just read about in the elemental plane, some traits of it, the Emerald Dream, mildly good aligned, the Outland, some traits about that, the Twisting Nether, subjective directional gravity. So they're really getting into all the basis, and I'm sure we will get into that more actually in some of the books. I'm sure they'll get it really busted out a lot more. Yeah, what's this? The Twisting Nether is strongly chaos aligned. Okay, as you saw, the next part will be heroes, but we will do that on another episode. Hey, I thank everybody so much for watching, for listening. I know there's some weird ones, some just ranting and blathering on, but it's neat what they did, and we're just kind of looking at it. And whether you pause and look at the words, or this inspires you to go look at the PDFs and you do it on your own and don't listen to me, that's cool. But hey, thanks for watching Lore of Warcraft. I'll see you next time, because this one's in the pipe 5x5.